Hi, I'm Randy from Truck Bed Treasures. For 40 years, Cheryl and I have been digging through basements, attics, porterhouses, barns, anywhere where we could find and unearth treasures and put them back in the hands of the people that really appreciate what they are. So, if you're watching this video, please watch it to the end and subscribe. We go on a lot of adventures and misadventures, and we're inviting you to come with us on every one. Thanks. Enjoy the video. Hi, Randy from Truck Bed Treasures. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and Cheryl's been kind of talking to me about doing this every once in a while. If you've been watching any of our videos, every once in a while I mention that I design products for companies, and I want to talk about one that I designed, and this is it. So I was a county humane officer, which meant that I would investigate large and small animal abuse cases, like walking in a barn and finding 20, 30 dead cows because the farmer just didn't want to feed them anymore, or rescuing wild Mustangs that were given to people by the BLM on an adoption program, and they were being abused. So I would actually go in front of a judge and secure a search warrant and go in and investigate. But we would also deal with snakes and hawks and eagles and owls and dogs and cats. And whenever we would set a live trap to catch a cat or a dog, sometimes there were damage, especially to the cats, because if you've seen the long rectangular cat traps, the cat would go in and the door would spring when it hit the trip plate, and the cat would immediately run to the end of the cage and run in to a wire mesh like this, and it would get scraped up on the nose or the eye area, and it would immediately turn and run back the long length of the trap to the other end and bang into a wall. And I saw cats with a lot of damage to the face, cuts and scrapes and bleeding. And it wouldn't happen all the time, but it would happen, enough. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the long box traps. I just saw some damage that I didn't like. And again, it didn't happen all the time or even a lot, but once is enough, right? So then when the humane officer would come to pick up the trap, the cat would freak out again and repeat the process and re-injure itself or injure itself worse. So jumped ahead 15 years, and Cheryl got a call from a girl that she went to school with who does the trap neuter release, which is a cat program for trapping feral cats, getting them neutered and releasing them back into the wild, and in that way they couldn't reproduce. And she asked Cheryl if she could speak with me, and I got on the phone, and she said, "Do you know what happens when cats get in the long box traps?" And I said, "Sure. They run into the end and they get banged up, and they run into the other end and repeats the process." And she said, "I don't want anything to do with it, but could you just design a trap that would be humane, that cats wouldn't get injured?" And I said, "Sure, I can do that." And, maybe a month went by and I was working on a design, and I stopped, and Cheryl looked at me and said, "Oh, you have that look in your eye again," which means I have a design in my head that's not the one I'm working on. And I actually went down and got a cardboard box, and I came up, and in about 12 to 14 minutes I had this design made out of cardboard. So what I did after that was I called my CAD guy and sent him some pictures, and I said, "Do some CAD work on this and send me the file, and I need some 3D renderings of it, colored renderings of it." And I received those about 4 days later, and I went to a local print shop and said, "Take all this information and put it into a pamphlet with this information," which I provided them, talking about the benefits of this trap I designed. And while that was being done, I called a company in northern Wisconsin called Tomahawk Live Traps, and they were about an hour and 40 minutes north of me. And I said I told them who I was, told them my website, randyjack.com, And I said, I have a trap that you might be interested in. And I actually spoke to the owner, Kyle. And Kyle said, we're fourth generation or third generation, and we pretty much have every trap that could be designed. And I said, you might want to take a look at it. So he said, come up on Tuesday, which was like probably a week after I came up with this concept. So I went up and I opened up the books that I had printed up and showed it to him, and he kind of sat up straight and said, I think we can sell a lot of these. So they did, and eventually bought out the rights to it. But here was my thinking behind this. When cats would go into a long, straight box trap that might be maybe 3 feet long, 12 inches wide and 12 inches high, it's just a long runway, rectangle. And there was no place for them to go except back and forth, from one end to the other. So I thought, a round trap. If you have a round trap, they can't run into anything. All they can do is go around in circles. But the problem with round traps, nobody ever came up with one because they didn't know how to work the door. How do you have a door that opens to the outside that's not going to stick way out, to where it's going to be a hindrance where the cat can walk into it and spring it. So what made my design so unique was my door opens to the inside, and I have this opened right now and set, because I couldn't do it with one hand when I was speaking with you. So it's a good sized trap. It's probably 18 inches in diameter. That's probably about 13 or 14 inches tall, so it will accommodate any size cat. And what happens is they would go in here smelling the food, and they would walk around. There's a magnet on this door to help it stay shut once it's shut, and it just caught this hanger. So they would go in and they would go around the circle here, and they would go back here to a food dish that was behind the door. And if you look, there's like a big square down here, which is a trip plate. So when a cat comes in and steps on that trip plate, and again, they're all the way in, their bodies are wrapped around like this, and their heads are over here to get the food. When they do that, step on the plate, I gotta hit it with this. The door springs shut. There's a magnet up here which keeps them from being able to open it. So all they can do now is run around in circles. And there's a really heavy gauge plastic on here. So the only grid is right here. But again, when they're running around in circles, they're not banging into anything. And I thought it was the coolest design. And there's a door on top here that you unhook, and you would stand the cage up like this and open this gate to transfer them to another cage, a holding cage, so they can't escape when you're doing the transfer. So Cheryl said you should call it the roundhouse trap, so that's what it was called, the roundhouse trap, and it was a perfect name for it. So, when you design products, you kind of get used to people that use traps and use traditional traps. They're going to fight anything that's different. They're going to say, oh, the door doesn't hold. A cat can open it up, which they can. Or if the cat gets their tail caught in here, it's going to hurt. And we've taken styrofoam cups and put them in there, and when it shuts, the cup doesn't even get crushed. But you're always going to have people complaining that the cats will get hurt, the cats will get banged up. Not the case. The trap is, it's a really good design, and it was designed, I designed it not to make money. I designed it to protect cats, to protect feral cats from getting beat up, because I've seen them get beat up so often. So it wasn't a design of greed. It was a design of passion. And again, you're always going to get the people that are going to attack everything. Anything that's different, they're going to fight it and say it's rotten, it doesn't work. It's not big enough, it's too big. It's round, but it's too round. It's just crazy. The concept is the cat goes in, it walks around, their tail and everything is in, they spring it, the door closes, they can't get it open, and they can just go around in circles. I mean, I'm very proud of this design. I've designed a lot of things for companies, and this is one of the coolest because it was something that nobody ever came up with before. 12 months after I designed it and I was getting mailbox money for royalties, like I said, Tomahawk bought the trap design out, which was kind of cool. But it's called the Roundhouse Trap. I know it's not a picking video where I went out in farms and dug around in things, or found depression glass or all the other treasures that we find, but it's just kind of a design that I'm very proud of, and it really helps people in the trap neuter release program, or people that want to catch cats in their yard that are, doing whatever they're doing and doing it in a very humane way that's not going to injure the cat. So it's called the Roundhouse Trap. I designed it. My website is randyjack.com, randyjack.com. And if you were interested in other things that I've designed, there's quite a bit of information there and a little bit of a bio. So again, something different. It might not get a lot of views. It might not get a lot of likes. It might not get a lot of comments, but it's something that I felt strongly about doing, especially after Cheryl brought it up. I thought, what a great idea. So please subscribe to our channel. You never know what you're going to find and experience. And if you comment, we always answer the comments. We appreciate every one of you. We talk about you on a daily basis. One of the first things that's like, hey, did you hear from so-and-so in the comments? So again, please subscribe and help us keep going here. It's free. So I hope you watch this to the end. It means a lot to me. And I'll catch you next time around. Thanks.